The Galactic Council had made a terrible mistake. Oh, what a spectacularly catastrophic error in judgment. Here I was, Vex 905, Senior Cultural Liaison for the Zephyrian Empire, standing in the pristine white corridors of Station Harmony, watching the most dangerous species in known space waltz around like they belonged here, humans. Deathworlders. The absolute madness of inviting them to our peaceful diplomatic station still boggled my four-chambered brain. They look so harmless, whispered my assistant, Krill Theta, his tentacles twitching nervously as a group of humans passed by our observation deck. Small, soft, no natural weapons visible, I clicked my mandibles in what my species considered dark amusement. Harmless? Krill, these creatures evolved on a planet where literally everything tries to kill them. Their own weather systems regularly attempt genocide. Their ground shakes without warning, their sky throws frozen water at terminal velocity, and their star bombards them with deadly radiation daily. But the Council, in their infinite wisdom, had decided humanity deserved a chance at peaceful integration. After all, what harm could a few representatives from Earth possibly cause on our most advanced diplomatic station? The answer to that question was currently walking toward us. Her name was Maya Santos, and she represented the human military contingent. 23 years old according to her file, which made her practically an infant by our standards. She stood barely 5.5 feet tall, with dark hair pulled back in what humans called a ponytail. Her skin held that peculiar golden-brown hue that indicated mixed ancestry, and her eyes held something that made my exoskeleton shiver. "Greetings, Ambassador Vex 905, she said, her voice carrying that strange musical quality all human speech possessed. "I'm Lieutenant Santos. Thank you for accommodating our delegation." I performed the traditional Zephyrian bow, my 6 arms moving in the prescribed ceremonial pattern. "The pleasure is entirely ours, Lieutenant Santos. We hope your stay aboard Station Harmony proves educational." Oh, how prophetic those words would become. The trouble started 3 days later at the cultural exchange dinner. Picture, if you will, beings from 17 different species gathered in our grand dining hall, each trying their absolute best to not accidentally commit a diplomatic incident. The Crystallian delegation had spent hours arranging their silicon-based forms to avoid offense. The Aquarians had brought their own atmosphere tanks to prevent their gills from causing discomfort to air breathers. Even the notoriously antisocial Void Touched had made an appearance, and then there were the humans, sitting at their assigned table, casually consuming nutrition that would kill most species present while making what they called small talk. So, Maya was saying to a Floresian diplomat, on Earth, we actually eat the seeds of plants as a delicacy. We call them nuts. The Floraxians' leaf appendages turned a pale green with horror. "You consume the reproductive organs of flora? Willingly?" "Oh, that's nothing," chimed in another human, Dr. Elena Vasquez, a xenobiologist who seemed to find everything absolutely hilarious. "Wait until you hear about honey." I was monitoring this conversation from my position at the head table when I noticed Zrak Prime approaching the human table. Now, Zrak Prime was what you might call a problem. Standing 8 feet tall with purple-scaled skin and the entitled attitude of someone whose species had dominated 3-star systems, he had a reputation for viewing smaller species as entertainment. Well, Zrak Prime rumbled, his voice carrying that particular tone that made every female of every species instinctively step backward. "The famous Deathworlders. You're much smaller than the report suggested." Maya looked up from her plate, her expression neutral. "Size isn't everything, Zrak Prime. Though I imagine you'd have trouble with that concept." Several nearby conversations stopped. The translation systems carried that remark to every corner of the dining hall, and I swear I could hear the collective intake of breath from 14 different respiratory systems. Zrak Prime's eyes narrowed to slits. Amusing. Such spirit from such a tiny thing. What happened next would later be referred to in diplomatic circles as the incident that changed everything, though personally, I preferred to call it the day I learned why humans survive death worlds. Zrak Prime reached out with one of his massive clawed hands and placed it on Maya's shoulder. Not aggressively, mind you, just possessively. The way his species often did with those they considered inferior. Maya's reaction was immediate and terrifying. She didn't flinch. She didn't retreat. She didn't even raise her voice. Instead, she simply stood up, turned to face him fully, and smiled. It was the most horrifying expression I had ever witnessed. "Remove your hand," she said quietly, "or I'll remove your arm." The dining hall fell absolutely silent. Even the atmospheric processors seemed to pause in anticipation. Zrak Prime laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "You? Little Deathworlder? You think you can threaten me?" Maya's smile widened, showing those disturbing white bone fragments humans called teeth. "Oh, I'm not threatening you. I'm giving you a choice." That's when Zrak Prime made his second mistake. The first had been touching her without permission. The second was tightening his grip. What followed happened so fast that our security cameras had to be slowed down by a factor of 10 for the subsequent investigation. Maya's left hand shot up, grabbed Zrak Prime's wrist, and twisted. Her right hand slammed into his elbow joint while her entire body rotated with mechanical precision. The sound of Zrak Prime's arm breaking echoed through the dining hall like a gunshot. He dropped to his knees, screaming in 3 different languages, clutching his mangled limb while Maya stood over him, completely calm, not even breathing heavily. "Security to the main dining hall," announced the station's AI in that maddeningly cheerful tone it always used. "Medical emergency in progress." Maya looked down at the writhing Zrak Prime with something that might have been pity. "You know," she said conversationally, "where I come from, we have a saying, play with fire, get burned. Though in your case, it's more like, mess with a human, get your arm snapped like a twig." Dr. Vasquez was grinning from her seat at the table. Maya's actually been going easy on her training lately. She's usually much faster than that. Faster? I managed to croak, my voice box struggling with the implications. "Oh yeah," said the third human at the table, a pilot named Jack Morrison who looked like he could bench press a shuttlecraft. "Maya here is our demolitions expert, but she started as hand-to-hand combat instructor. Could probably take down half this station if she really wanted to." As medical teams rushed to tend to Zrak Prime, I found myself staring at this small human female who had just casually dismantled a being twice her size and 3 times her weight. She was already sitting back down, returning to her meal as if nothing unusual had happened. "Lieutenant Santos," I called out, my voice carrying across the now buzzing dining hall. "Perhaps we should discuss this incident in private?" She looked up from what appeared to be some sort of earth plant matter covered in fermented dairy products. "Sure thing, Ambassador. Though honestly, there's not much to discuss." He grabbed me without permission. I gave him a chance to stop, he didn't take it. Basic cause and effect. Basic cause and effect. As if breaking the arm of a Zephyrian noble was equivalent to spilling a beverage. As we made our way to my private office, I couldn't help but notice how the other species in the corridor instinctively moved aside for Maya. Word traveled fast on a space station, and apparently, the message was clear: the small human female was not to be trifled with. "You realize," I said once we were seated in my office, "that Zrak Prime will demand satisfaction for this insult? His species has very specific honor codes regarding physical confrontation." Maya shrugged, a peculiarly human gesture involving the raising and lowering of the shoulders. "Let him. Where I come from, we have honor codes too. First rule, keep your hands to yourself. Second rule, if you break the first rule, don't be surprised when somebody breaks your arm." But the diplomatic implications. The potential for interspecies conflict. "The ambassador," Maya interrupted, and her voice carried a steel edge that made my chitin rattle. "Let me explain something about humans that maybe didn't make it into your briefing files. We don't start fights. But we absolutely, definitely, 100% finish them." I stared at her, trying to process this casual declaration of violence from someone who looked like she should be studying for academic examinations rather than snapping the limbs of galactic nobility. Besides, she continued, her tone brightening considerably, if Zrak Prime wants a rematch, he's welcome to try. Though next time, I might not be so gentle. Gentle. She called what she did to Zrak Prime gentle. At that moment, my communication device chimed with an urgent message from Station Command. I read it twice before my brain could properly process the information. Lieutenant Santos, I said slowly, it appears Zrak Prime has formally challenged you to single combat in the arena. According to Zephyrian law, as the injured party, he has the right to demand satisfaction. Maya's grin returned, and I suddenly understood why humans had managed to survive on a planet that spent every waking moment trying to exterminate them. Perfect, she said, cracking her knuckles in a sound that somehow conveyed both anticipation and impending doom. I was getting bored anyway. And that, dear reader, was how I learned that sometimes the most dangerous predator in the room is the one that looks like prey. The arena filled faster than I had ever seen in my 47 years of diplomatic service. Word of the impending combat between a human and Zrak Prime had spread through Station Harmony like wildfire through an oxygen-rich atmosphere. Every species wanted to witness this unprecedented spectacle. This is absolutely insane, muttered Krill Theta as we took our positions in the diplomatic viewing box. She's going to be slaughtered. Zrak Prime outweighs her by at least 300 pounds. I watched through the transparent aluminum barrier as Maya entered the arena. She had changed into what she called workout clothes, form-fitting black garments that seemed designed for maximum mobility. Her human colleagues sat in the front row, and their expressions ranged from eager anticipation to barely contained laughter. As if watching their comrade face potential dismemberment was somehow amusing. "Hey Maya," called out Jack Morrison. "Remember what happened to the last guy who thought size mattered?" "Which one?" Maya called back, beginning what appeared to be some sort of ritualistic stretching routine. "The Gorvanian heavyweight champion, or that Nexus Prime enforcer who tried to intimidate me at the bar on Kepler Station?" "Both," shouted Dr. Vasquez, practically bouncing in her seat with excitement. "Both? How many interspecies incidents had this tiny human been involved in?" Zrak Prime entered from the opposite gate, his arm now encased in a regenerative medical brace but clearly functional. The purple scales along his spine were raised in an aggressive display, and his forearms flexed menacingly as he approached the center of the arena. "Attention spectators," announced the arena's AI system. "This is a formal challenge combat under Zephyrian honor law. Combatants will fight until one yields, becomes incapacitated, or..." The AI paused with what I swear was reluctance, "dies." "Dies?" squeaked Krill Theta. "They can't be serious." Oh, but they were deadly serious. And apparently, so was Maya. She finished her stretching and walked to the center circle, looking for all the worlds like she was about to engage in some sort of recreational activity rather than potentially lethal combat. "Any last words, little Deathworlder?" Zrak Prime snarled, looming over her with all four arms spread wide in an intimidation display that had worked on countless species across the galaxy. Maya tilted her head, considering. "Yeah, actually. 2 things. First, thanks for the warm-up during dinner. I was getting stiff from all that sitting around. Second." Her smile turned absolutely predatory, "I hope your medical insurance covers multiple fractures." The combat bell chimed. Zrak Prime lunged forward with surprising speed for something his size, all four arms reaching to grab, crush, and demolish the fragile human before him. Maya simply wasn't there anymore. She had moved sideways and down, sliding under his grasping limbs like water flowing around a rock. As she passed beneath him, her fist connected with the back of his left knee with a sound like a hammer hitting wet clay. Zrak Prime stumbled, roaring in pain and fury, spinning to face her with remarkable agility for someone whose leg had just been expertly compromised. "Cute," Maya said, dancing backward just out of reach. "You're faster than the Gorvanian champion." He went down after the first knee strike. The purple giant charged again, this time keeping his center of gravity lower, trying to avoid her previous tactic. Maya waited until the last possible second, then dropped to her back, planted her feet against his chest, and used his own momentum to launch him clear over her head. Zrak Prime hit the arena wall with a crash that made the entire structure vibrate. "Oh, come on!" Maya called out as she rolled back to her feet. "At least make this interesting." The Nexus Prime Enforcer lasted 3 whole minutes. From the crowd, I heard Jack Morrison's voice, "She's just playing with him." Playing? This looked like systematic destruction to me. Zrak Prime pulled himself from the wall, his purple scales now showing several dark cracks. His breathing had become labored, and one of his 4 arms hung at an odd angle. But his species were known for their resilience, and he still had 3 functional limbs. "You fight like a coward," he gasped. "Stand still and face me with honor." Maya's expression shifted slightly, and suddenly the playful combatant was gone, replaced by something cold and professional. "Honor? You want to talk about honor?" She began walking toward him, her movements now carrying a fluid grace that made my survival instincts scream warnings. "How about the honor of respecting someone's personal space? How about the honor of accepting 'no' as a complete sentence?" Zrak Prime swung his massive fist at her head with enough force to pulverize stone. Maya ducked under it, stepped inside his reach, and drove her elbow into his solar plexus with surgical precision. The sound he made was unlike anything I had ever heard. It was the noise of a being who had just realized that everything he thought he knew about combat was wrong. "The thing about humans," Maya said conversationally as Zrak Prime doubled over, gasping for air, "is that we're persistence hunters. We don't need to be stronger or faster. We just need to be more stubborn than whatever's trying to kill us." She grabbed his head with both hands and brought her knee up to meet his face. The impact echoed through the arena like a thunderclap. Zrak Prime went down hard, all 4 arms spread wide, unconscious before he hit the ground. The arena fell completely silent. Maya stood over her fallen opponent, not even winded, checking her knuckles for damage with the casual air of someone who had just completed routine maintenance. "Medical team to the arena floor," she called out helpfully. "Your champion's going to need reconstructive work on his nasal cavity. And probably his ego." The human section erupted in cheers and what I could only describe as celebratory howling. The rest of the spectators sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had just witnessed. A 5.5-foot human female had just demolished one of the most feared warriors in the galaxy without breaking a sweat. As medical teams rushed onto the arena floor, Maya walked over to the diplomatic viewing box. "Ambassador Vex 905, I hope this settles the honor debt situation. I'd hate for there to be any lingering diplomatic complications." I stared down at her, my 4 eyes wide with what I was beginning to recognize as a new emotion, profound respect mixed with absolute terror. "Yes," I managed to croak. "I believe the debt has been adequately addressed." "Excellent." Her demeanor immediately shifted back to that disconcertingly cheerful professionalism. "In that case, I should probably get back to the technical briefings. We're reviewing the station's defense systems this afternoon, and I'd hate to be late." Defense systems. They were letting the humans review our defense systems. As Maya walked away, chatting casually with her human colleagues about something called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai, I turned to Krill Theta, who was still staring at the unconscious form of Zrak Prime being loaded onto a medical transport. "Krill," I said slowly, "I want you to send an urgent message to High Command. Tell them we need to revise our threat assessment protocols immediately." "What should I tell them, sir?" I watched Maya disappear into the corridor, probably heading off to casually terrify our engineering staff with her questions about structural weak points and optimal explosive placement. "Tell them," I said, my voice carrying the weight of newfound understanding, "that we've been thinking about this all wrong. We've been so focused on protecting ourselves from the humans that we forgot the most important question. Which is..." I clicked my mandibles in what was definitely not amusement anymore. "How do we convince them to protect us?" Because watching Maya Santos dismantles Rack Prime with the casual efficiency of someone performing routine maintenance had taught me something that would keep me awake for many cycles to come. Humans didn't just survive death worlds, they thrived on them, and now they were here, on our peaceful station, surrounded by species that had never faced real predators, had never known true violence, had never learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing in the room is the one that looks harmless. ASI filed my incident report that evening, recommending immediate revision of all human interaction protocols. I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Maya Santos had sent a message today, not just as Rack Prime, but to every species watching. The message was simple: humans were not to be underestimated, undervalued, or unwisely provoked, and frankly, after what I had witnessed, I was perfectly content to keep it that way. After all, if a single human could do that much damage when someone simply touched her without permission, what would happen if someone actually threatened her friends? I really didn't want to find out.